Buffalo Gap, an incorporated community 26 miles just south of Abilene. It's at the intersection of Farm Roads 89 and 1235, 13 miles southwest of Abilene in central Taylor County. It was founded in 1877 and has had a post office since 1878. The Callahan Divide, the topographic boundary between the Brazos and Colorado basins, crosses Buffalo Gap from east to west. Elm Creek passes through and once served as a watering hole for buffalo. The present Buffalo Gap Highway, Farm Road 89, follows the old Center Line Trail, which was surveyed in 1874 and ran from Texarkana to El Paso. Another major road entered the county on the south side of the mountains and passed through Buffalo Gap in the direction of Fort Phantom Hill. The road forked at Buffalo Gap. One branch led southwest to Pecos County and the other to Tom Green County. Buffalo traveled through the area on the way to the high plains. The earliest history of Taylor County centers around this gap in the divide, where in the 1860s and 1870s buffalo hunters made winter camp and from there transported their kill to Fort Griffin and other convenient centers of trade. As it was the only town in Taylor County, Governor Richard B. Hubbard, acting Texas Secretary of State, approved the selection of Buffalo Gap as the temporary county seat of Taylor County on April 30, 1874. On July 3, 1878, this action was formalized. 20 days later, the judge, sheriff, clerk, and commissioners met. The first general public election was held with 87 voters. By 1880, Buffalo Gap had 1,200 people at drugstore and carriage and blacksmith shop, a big hotel, a jail, 3 or 4 grocery stores, and a salon. Buffalo hunting was popular in 1875. The carcasses sold for $5 to $15, and the bones were used to refine sugar. In 1895, the Santa Fe Railroad was built through the town. In 1883, the cornerstone of Buffalo Gap College was laid. The documents pertaining to the times were sealed within the rock. Later, vandals tore out the stone and removed the contents. This Presbyterian college, the first formal attempt at higher education in Taylor County, opened in June 1885. Buffalo Gap called itself the Athens of the West. The Baptist Church of Buffalo Gap is the oldest Baptist church in Taylor County. About 1885, Marshall G. Jenkins began a weekly paper, the Buffalo Gap Live Oak, and in the mid-1890s, the Buffalo Gap Messenger was circulated. When the Texas and Pacific Railway established headquarters in Abilene, a competition to be county seat began in 1883. Buffalo Gap lost the battle. By 1884, Buffalo Gap had decreased in population to 600. Presbyterian, Methodist, Episcopal, Baptist, and First Christian churches were established in the community, which also had a newspaper, 16 businesses, and a high school. In 1890, the population had dropped to 300 and the number of businesses to 7. In 1892, Buffalo Gap had a population of 400, 11 businesses, Presbyterian and Methodist churches, and Buffalo Gap College. The college declined its charter, and its charter expired in 1902. In 1914, the town reported 500 residents, 10 business, and a bank. Between 1925 and 1980, the population fluctuated between 250 and 400, and businesses between 2 and 12. In the 1930s, Buffalo Gap had 5 churches, a number of farms and dwellings scattered along the main roads, and a camp in a small park. In 1990, it had 409 residents and 6 rated businesses. The town has carved out an identity as an old-time cultural commercial center. In the 1920s, its Old Settlers Picnic was a well-attended annual event. The Ernie Wilson Museum of the Old West was founded in 1956 by Ernie Wilson. Dr. R. Lee Road and his wife Ann purchased the Buffalo Gap Jail and Courthouse in 1970 and restored it with help from the community. The native limestone jail dates from 1879. The sandstone blocks were concave in the center and mortared together with cannonballs to keep prisoners from chiseling their way out. The jail is listed in the National Register of Prisoners. The jail is listed in the National Registers of Historic Buildings. The museum is named for its first curator, who was also a lawyer and publisher of the Buffalo Gap Messenger. In the 1990s, this museum became part of Buffalo Gap Historical Village. The McWhinney History Education Group purchased the village in 1999 and currently operate it under the direction of site manager Heather Reed. Centuries of buffalo herds migrated through a gap in the divide. Apache and Comanche followed them there, and so did the white buffalo. Hunters by the 1870s Apache and Comanche followed them there, and so did white buffalo hunters by the 1870s. Cowboys traversed the gap, driving cattle along the Great Western Trail near where the village of Buffalo Gap sprang, up in the mid-1800s. Slip on your boots and experience the last 50 years of the Texas frontier at Buffalo Gap History Village. A dozen plus restored structures and thousands of artifacts recreate life from 1875 to 1925. There are Indian arrowhead and frontier weapon collections in the 1879 Taylor County Courthouse and Jail. There is medicine from the 1900s in the doctor's office. Pictures a school day at the 1930s two-room Cottonwood Black School. The Pioneer Log Cabin, Railroad Depot, Blacksmith Shop, Bank, and Gas Station are all places you can visit in Buffalo Gap. You can also learn the history at one of the Buffalo Gap's many educational and living history events. You can even oversight at two historic homes across from the village. Next, we're going to talk to our guest speaker, Kendall Johnston.
Buffalo Gap, Texas was the original county seat of Taylor County, Texas. The courthouse still stands today, and it moved to Abilene in a war in 1883, and Abilene was the new railroad town, and there was a big fight, and the records were captured and taken to Abilene in the night. The courthouse is still there, unlike the original Abilene courthouse from 1883, because the Abilene courthouse, the oldest one, that was built in about 1912. The courthouse in Buffalo Gap was 1883 and prior. There also was a Presbyterian college in Buffalo Gap, and the monument, or the historical marker telling about the Presbyterian college, is near the Settlers Reunion. The historic courthouse is in the historic village in present-day Buffalo Gap, with a lot of historic buildings from the Taylor County and Calacan County and surrounding areas that have been moved into the historic village, along with the original Taylor County courthouse. And there's history in that, and also a gallows where they used to hang people inside the courthouse, criminals that were executed.